Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate. I am Jude Sandoval. Thanks for being with me today. I can't tell you how extraordinarily excited I am today to welcome Duane Robert to the show. Duane is the founder of the dadsurvivingdivorce.com website, as well as the Dad Surviving Divorce YouTube channel and the Breaking the Cycle with DSD podcast. And Duane specifically works with co-parent or talks about co-parenting with a narcissistic ex and helps people survive a narcissistic divorce with kids. Now, this is something that's very, very close to me. My ex would fall in lines with what we would describe or what we will describe as narcissists. So Duane, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Jude, thanks for asking me on. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit offline about the audience and divorced fathers. Oftentimes, and I know this was my case, that it's just very soul-searching time when you're going through a divorce or right after a divorce for a numerable different reasons, but figuring out how to then parent, be a parent, a single parent when you've had a household together is a challenge for many men. And then co-parenting with somebody else is a challenge. All these things are just really basic challenges, but then you throw in something that might be described as a personality disorder like this, and it makes it even exponentially more challenging. So can we start by just describing or maybe defining what narcissism is?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And there's a big misnomer on narcissism, right? Everyone uses a term and they're starting to overuse it, right? Typically, when you think of a narcissist, you think of somebody that is self-absorbed, that they're overtly out there. You might think about it with they're constantly, posting pictures on Instagram, and it's just this very self-inflated ego. And,
Right.
or if you look at politicians and or different other public figures, you'll see that type of behavior, but it's a lot more nuanced on that. And there's just narcissism, which some narcissism is healthy, right? I mean, you're supposed to have some interest in yourself for self-preservation, right? I mean, if you just completely give everything away, then you could end up living under a bridge. I mean, until
Right.
someone takes your spot under the bridge.
Right.
But so people overuse the term, but then it rolls into, there is an area under the DSM-5, the Diagnostic for Statistical Manual for Therapists, which I am not a therapist, but what people normally, when they go through this, you end up researching a lot of stuff because you're trying to find out what happened in your life. But there is a section in there that talks about cluster B personality disorders. And what falls into that is narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and I think psychopathy. And the reality is that when it gets into the area where it's destructive is where it really creates a problem. And then the other part of that's really a problem, especially for NPD type people, is they typically don't seek care because they don't think they have a problem. They don't generally get diagnosed. So oftentimes you're stuck in a situation where you're like, oh my God, what happened? How did I get into this situation? How did my sweet, well, we'll talk about it in the terms of a wife. I mean, your sweet, innocent little butterfly of a spouse has turned into this, demon monster is what it feels like. And you're completely blindsided. Well,
Right.
The reality is if you're dealing with somebody who has these traits, they spend most of their time curating their life, even to you, their spouse, and basically drafting a fantasy land. So it starts out strong. It starts out with all if you've looked into it, I'm sure you have, but there's love bombing and future faking and mirroring and all the different techniques that are used to effectively hook you to become at the beginning the person you really were always looking for. But the problem is it's a facade and it's not maintainable. So it starts to degrade over time because you always can't have that fake face on.
Right.
And then it slowly degrades the relationship. And typically what happens is it takes a lot of time. My situation, it took 2 decades where it slowly degrades and you're not even realizing it. And then you get towards the end where you start realizing something's wrong. You finally, typically what happens is someone will set a boundary, or they'll say, look, things have got to change.
Mm-hmm.
And the second a narcissistic or borderline type person, and there's difference in the two categories, but fundamentally they both, the second that they realize they no longer have you, that the mask has fallen, that, oh my God, you see who I am.
Yep.
It's like in an instant, it shuts off, and they can go from I love you to you don't exist, or I hate you and you're the most horrible person in the world.
Yep.
And for the person who spent any amount of time in love with and dedicated to a relationship, that will emotionally send you off the deep end a lot of times, especially if you don't understand what you're dealing with.
Right. And let's also clarify a couple of things in that narcissism isn't just, like you said, somebody that's out there that is very boisterous, that might be confident. You see, you might be described as like Hollywood stars or CEOs or people like that. There's different types: grandiose narcissism, vulnerable narcissism, and they're very, very different in how those individuals present. Can you define those a little bit?
Yeah, I mean the first one, I mean the grandiose, or sometimes it's called overt, is what you typically think. You know,
Right.
It's the person who's like, let me talk, dominates the conversation, you know, me, and disregards pretty much anybody in their sphere of influence. The vulnerable or covert, the problem with that one is it's a lot more, I consider a covert a lot more dangerous,
Yeah.
and a lot more sadistic, because
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing is they're like watching you like a hawk, checking what you're doing, and then like, okay, how do I gauge my message? What do I say to get you to do this? I mean, it's very manipulative.
Right.
And often, I mean, it's the other part's easier, right? You can look around and you go like, okay, that person's is
Right.
not good.
Very easy to identify the grandiose narcissist.
Yeah, you see him, but the other ones will come in and they'll be your friend, or they'll tell, like I said before, they'll come in and they'll look at you, and everything that you like, they like, but they don't, but they do it in such a way to where it seems like, oh wow, you know, you're really into this type of style of music. Oh my God, I've loved that my entire life. Where
Right.
maybe they never did.
Right.
So, but they're doing it in such a convincing way because they're watching you and they're analyzing your responses like in real time to know what to say, to try to get underneath your skin, to get you to believe the false narrative that they're putting out there, and effectively suck you in.
Right. I liken it to a confidence game, or a confidence man that will like play the game and look and try to work their way into your life and your mind, and try to set that all up for their benefit.
Yeah, it's like a long con is really what it ultimately boils down to. Is, I mean, and you'll look at that and you'll watch TV shows on that, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this person's scamming people, so they're playing on their fears, they're playing on their interest. You know, they're doing a lot the same thing, but in a relationship, one, you're not expecting it. You know, you meet somebody, however you meet them, you have some chemistry, you develop a relationship, and you're assuming that both of you are starting this from a baseline of honesty and integrity, and you don't realize that it's not. Now, typically, you're going to see signs, and most people that I've talked to after these experiences, most of the time, to a T, you can look back and you can see the warning signs. It's like, oh my God, now that I can see it clearly, I can see from day one all the little nuances, all the little comments that were said that really told me what I was dealing with, but because it didn't fit the package that was being put out there, I just discounted it, or I thought the person was just being overcritical of themselves. The really scary part, or the reality is the vulnerable narcissist or the covert narcissist will typically tell you all along the way who they are, what they will do to you later, to a T. And it's like, but when they say it, you don't believe it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Right. And it goes back to that saying, if they tell you that they're going to do something to you, they're going to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of these signs. And I think for this conversation, let's focus on that vulnerable or covert, because the grandiose it's been it's been covered so much. We see it on TV, we see it in movies, we read the articles about it. They're very easy to they're very easy to spot, and I think probably if you call them on it, most of them would probably be like, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah. One thing I just want to add on, I think the other problem with this is societal, in that it's pretty much accepted that you kind of expect, like, well, we'll just use it with like men typically fall into the overt thing. So you kind of like, oh, okay, that's the way they are. And women are more, potentially, I don't want to say manipulative, but it's like those character traits. And so it's kind of like you're already baseline to where you've like already accepted it, right? So if you meet somebody and they're trying to manipulate you to get you to do something, even if you recognize it's like, well, but that's just the way it is. And I think it's really important for people to realize that there's toxic behavior, whether it's overt or covert, and there's appropriate behavior. And we all need to learn to discern the difference and basically say, I'm not going to allow that in my life. It's not right. I'm not going to put up with it, and have a healthy boundary on it, so that you effectively can either catch it early on or put a stop to it, or at least say, okay, this person is not somebody that even deserves to have a space in my life.
Right. That's a great point. And I'd like to talk about techniques and tips in a little bit about how to set boundaries, what to do when dealing with these people. And I also want to be clear with at least the men in my audience. I know your audience is more mixed, but this is something that is very prevalent in women. So this is not just a male thing. And they've even shown that the trait neuroticism, which women score much higher on than men, is something that is an indicator of the vulnerable narcissism. So be aware of what's going on. Be aware of this. Don't think that, she's not narcissistic because she's not out there being this grandiose, flamboyant, confident person, because it's actually the vulnerable covert is more based in insecurity and a lower self value than it is in an overinflated self value. So for the men out there thinking, oh well, this isn't something that my ex might be, or just pay attention to it. I think it's as prevalent, if not more prevalent, and it's, like you said, much more dangerous, not only to you, but to your children as well, because your children, and this might be something, if we have time, we talk about, that they're having to deal with too. And it is extraordinarily damaging.
Yeah. I think one of the when you're dealing with this, I mean, obviously going through a divorce is stressful no matter what. But there are people that can amicably, for the good of the kids, say, okay, you know what, you're going left, I'm going right. That's okay. We're on divergent paths, but they're still emotionally mature enough to where you can actually co-parent, where you can actually work together, and it's a cooperative thing. Right. Now, that's out there, right? I mean,
not with the narcissist.
But exactly, when you're dealing with somebody who's toxic or who has, and most of the time, people aren't diagnosed with these things. So you're gonna, if you're out here and you're looking at it going, oh crap, what am I dealing with? The likelihood that you're going to get a psychologist or a therapist to diagnose your ex and then hand you a piece of paper saying what they are is highly unlikely.
Right.
You're going to have to basically look at patterns of behavior, see what the trends and what you're really experiencing, and then make the determination on what you think you're dealing with. And just to come back to that, is if you're dealing with somebody who's an ex and they are combative and it's turning into a high conflict divorce, that's not, and especially if it lasts a long time, and granted, whatever happens, people get angry, but they have a tendency to get over it.
Right.
Somebody who is like this, you will deal with this for the duration of the rest. I mean, basically for the rest of your kids' lives. They don't change. They don't have an aha moment. They don't wake up one day and go, wow, you know what? Because I'm fighting with Jude all the time, this is making my life complicated, his life complicated, and the kid's life complicated. We need to stop this. The problem is they really enjoy the chaos, and they'll perpetuate it for you. I mean, I'm going on 9 years on this, and I It doesn't affect me the way it used to. It definitely doesn't affect me the way it used to, but the same games that were played 9 years ago are still being played today. It's the only thing that's changed is the way I interact with it and the way I basically coach people and put videos out on how to deal with this so that you minimize the impact that these people have on your life.
Absolutely. It's been 8 years for me, and the same things I was describing to you, the text I'm getting this morning, 8 years later, the same game, same things, same attempts that were happening 8 years ago and during the divorce. And so, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the thing you have to remember is a person who falls into this category, especially on covert narcissism, they need the chaos and they need the attention from you.
Right.
So they don't, I mean, hey, you would think that someone would say, oh, I want positive attention. I would rather this person be nice to me. But all they want to know is that they matter in your life, even if it's just to make you, make you miserable to lash out. Like what you were talking about before is, with your current situation right now, I mean, it's like throwing these things out there, and by design, what it is to try to get you angry, to say, to respond, to acknowledge that they're there. And it's really hard for people who don't have this problem to deal with it, because you're like, I just don't want to deal with the chaos. Come on, can't we just calm down? Can't we just, I mean, God, all we have to do is just a little tiny bit of communication. We don't have to be friends, but can't we just stop this? And they won't, because they need the chaos.
Well, in positive communication, not just communication for the sake of incessant texts and emails that are badgering or otherwise manipulating in some other some other manner. So let's talk about a few signs of the vulnerable or covert narcissist.
The easiest one right off the bat is actions and words. Right. Okay. If somebody is saying something like typically a vulnerable narcissist or a covert will say, oh, I love you. I would never do, of course you mean something to me. Right. And they say it kind of like that. You probably some of your audience are like, holy crap, he just channeled my ex. And the reality is when they say something, do their actions back it up? Right. Are they doing things that actually demonstrate what they're saying? If they're saying, of course I co-parent, but then and what's really weird is they can look right into your eye and say it with such conviction that you find yourself after the conversation going, am I losing my mind? Yeah, I mean, it's like, I know that this isn't real, but they say it with such conviction that it's like, I must be losing my mind, and it drives you crazy.
Well, it makes you question your sanity. And I know during my divorce and for the men that are going through divorce right now, that I was like, is there something, am I missing something? Am I not? Because it's all inconsistent. And so with that type of person, would you agree that pointing out the inconsistencies in words to actions is a positive? Not that that's going to change. And let's just again preface this, that you're not going to ever change this person. So these are coping mechanisms. These are tools and tips that allow you to make your life and your children's lives better and easier to get along with, but you're not going to change anybody.
Well, there's two answers on that. I mean,
so would you okay.
Well, I would say so the thing is, the best answer, I mean, for anyone listening to this, I would say no. But here's the problem with it is, until you convince yourself what you're dealing with, you can't just wake up one day and turn everything off and basically start over, right? I mean, what I mean is that you were in love with this person, you had a relationship with this person, they meant something to you. And as we were talking about before, that these people can turn it off in an instant, most normal people can't. So you're going to have to convince yourself what is real.
Okay.
So sorry, your video dropped, so I wasn't sure if we.
Yeah, it's okay. The audio will just keep going and.
Okay. No. So anyway, sometimes you have to confront the person just because you're thinking to yourself, well, this isn't true. The problem is, one, let me just say this right off the bat. If you suspect that your spouse or your ex has a personality disorder, do not, under any circumstances, tell them that you figured out what they are and that you think they are, you know, a narcissist or borderline or whatever. Do not do that, because it's almost like a tactical advantage, right? It's like that intel. If you have if anybody listening has passed prior service, you know, when you have operational security, that's one of those little tidbits of information you need to keep to yourself, because if you share it, typically to a T, from everyone I've ever talked to or coached that's made that mistake, it's made things significantly worse. Now, if you feel that you need to, like, okay, if I point out this patterns of behavior and how the inconsistency between the actions and the words, then my lovely little butterfly will see that, you know, we can fix this relationship and have a better, stronger communication. Is it going to happen with a narcissist? No. But the problem is most people can't go from you're the devil to, you know, to that point without actually basically reproving to yourself that it's happening. An analogy I use sometimes, you know, you take the hot pan, you got the hot pan on the stove, you grab it, you burn yourself. Well, normally you burn yourself once and you're like, okay, that's hot. And you make the connection. Unfortunately, with this, and there's trauma bonds and there's other issues that result in it, is like you end up having to touch the pan. Ow, you burn yourself. Okay, well, did that really burn me, or was it something else? You touch it again. Ow, crap. And you end up having to do it a few times to prove the point, right?
Well, yeah, and then you got to get hit in the head with the pan before you'll say, "Oh, okay, maybe this person is not going to change, and this is just the way they are." So that's a fantastic point. Just and the men I work with all the time, that when they run into this, they just say, "Well, you know, she's served me documents, and then she's taken them back, and then she's going to serve me again," and I'll say, hey, look, she's telling you, like you said earlier, she's telling you what she's going to do. She said she's going to destroy your life. She's going to destroy your life. So be down
and prepare.
Pay attention and prepare, because if you're not preparing, then you're not preparing for your children. And so if, you know, and I made this mistake, and I'm speaking from huge experience here. I was like, why would I destroy the parent or the mother of my children? Why would I want to do that in a divorce? Why would I want to go through this and essentially go to war and go to battle in this? Why can't we figure this out? Just understand that your rational thinking is not happening on the other side of this. It is absolutely different. And so if you think, you know, you get burnt once, if the action is take the action for what it absolutely is.
Well, and to go back to that covert manipulative methodology, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll play those games, and it's just to almost see what they can get away with. It's like, okay, well, I've done this. You know, we started out here, you know, we started out at the fantasy land, and systematically it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try this. How does he respond to that? Okay, well, oh, that was too far. He got too mad, so I won't do that for a while. Right. It's like it slowly wears you down. And then when it gets to the point that it's this catastrophic nightmare, it gets real. I mean, it gets like you were just talking about, stuff like, okay, well, I'll file and then I'll pull it back. Or I'll say, I'm accusing you of domestic violence, or worse. I have some clients who have been accused of basically molesting their young kids, and then pull it back and then put it back out there. And it's just this cat and mouse game to try to basically just screw with your mind. Now, the other thing that's really very common on this, and this is I guess the underlying motivation in my mind on why they go as dark as they do, is when they realize that the relationship's over and they realize that you see them, you know, the mask has fallen, you see the monster underneath the mask. They're like, oh my God, this person is going to expose me. The easiest way to undo that is to destroy you and your credibility, so that when you go out and you say, my ex is a psycho, people are like, yeah, you're disgruntled. Yeah. You know, you know what I mean? It's to undermine your credibility. And if they can start saying you're an abuser, or you're an emotional abuser, or basically just tarnish your reputation, the whole goal is that when you go out and you say, hey, this is my story, people are like, yeah, you're lying, you know, and that's a big case on this. And this is why it's critically important at the early stages of this, that you understand what you're dealing with, that when you burn your hand, you realize, okay, that's hot and that's a problem. you understand what the quote unquote game is, and you don't fall for those traps.
Right.
It is critically important that you're able to maintain your profession, or not professional reputation, but maintain your reputation, maintain your credibility. And the stress and the anxiety and the fear of all this erodes it. It's a common thing. I mean, your whole world has been flipped upside down. You don't know what side is up anymore. You're being accused of things that you've never even, you're like, holy crap, I would never do that in a million years. More than likely, you're being denied access to your kids. So, you know, you're dealing with, oh my God, parental alienation's happening. And it puts you in a state that unfortunately, if you don't stop yourself from that, you just feed into the narrative that's going on, and you unwittingly start almost validating the stories that the ex is saying about you. You're undermining your own credibility by your actions.
Right. And I want to add something in here too. And you said, don't identify it. Don't tip your hat to it as well. And don't say anything to your children about it. This is not something to discuss with your children. And I think that's important, because what you're probably going to run into on the other side is an ex that is going to do a lot of that with bad mouthing you, with talking negatively about you to them, because they get wrapped into this whole game and charade with them. And the best thing that you can do is not get sucked into it. And that is incredibly hard when you're getting hit from all directions, and then you have some of the most precious beings in your life asking you questions about what your ex has said about you and what you're doing and why you're bad, etc.
Yeah, and the other thing I just want to throw out there, because I think a lot of people think that the parental alienation aspect of this is overt, that the ex is sitting there going, you know, your dad is a monster, your dad is bad. It's not what happens. It's very, like, going back into the covert and narcissistic type traits, it's very manipulative and coercive and minor. It's not like, oh, your dad's horrible and he doesn't do this. It's like, oh, I wish your dad would, I wish he would just be more involved. All I ever wanted was him to be involved in your life. Right. And it's those little nuggets that are just planted. It's like incepted into the little child's mind. And it's like, oh, okay. And so a lot of people think that they're being overtly destroyed by the ex. You know, it's like, oh, and sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are times that I think the majority of the time, it is a lot more covert and manipulative and subtle. I've had my kids right now, I have a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And I've had conversations with them at varying stages. It's like, oh, mommy never says anything bad about you. You know, you never. And then in the course of the conversation, there'll be something that's just horrific. And it's like, well, how is that not bad? Right. I mean, so it's very subtle. And the bottom line, just before we move on, I just want to say, especially if you have kids, focus on your relationship with them.
Absolutely.
All the crap that's going on with the other parent or with the moms in this situation it's not that it's irrelevant, but focusing on that is going to hurt your relationship with your child instead of increase the bond. Give your child your attention and your time.
Yep.
You know, if you can't, I mean, if dinner is top ramen because you've been financially ruined, make the most of it and make sure that you're making the eye contact, you're having the physical connection with your kid, and you're present for them. That is so important. When you do that and you have somebody trying to alienate you, it makes it so much harder, because the kid's seeing that there's a difference. What often happens is they get primed covertly for how you're going to respond, and then when they're with you, and it's like, for instance, if someone says, oh, I wish your dad wasn't always so angry or so depressed or whatever, and then they come over and then you're, for completely different reasons, you're exhibiting those behavioral traits in the kid's mind, it's validating what the other parent said, or what in the situation, what the mom said. So if you stay focused on that, and you can start to undo this.
Yeah, absolutely. Two things on that is we talk a lot about self-care through this, and keeping yourself in a good place, in a good space, taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in order to get through the divorce, and then also for your life after divorce and rebuilding and flourishing after that. That's huge. And then the second point I wanted to make is that the children will figure this out eventually. They will figure out what is going on, and even if it takes time, like you said, there are different stages and different levels of development and understanding. After a period of time, after dealing with this, after having spent time with you in your household, in your environment, and also seeing how you are modeling a proper and positive lifestyle for them, and not doing these things, and then they see the other side of it, they will figure it out eventually. It might take some time. There might be some challenges around it, but they will eventually figure it out.
And the one thing I just want to add on that is, whenever your kids start to see it, and you have a conversation, and maybe they come up to you and they go, "Hey, Daddy, why does Mommy do this?" Or "I'm starting to see this," or "I feel bad about this." Do not take that as your opportunity to unleash on them and expose everything. Right.
Yep.
At the end of the day, kids want to love both parents.
Yeah.
That's the foundation. Nobody, I mean, think about it. Most people who are in these things, like in my situation, it was 2 decades. I think you said you were 10 decades.
8 years. Yeah. 8 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So the thing is we were also blind in the, we failed to see the warning signs that are there, and they weren't our parent. So
Right.
Now you have a child whose biological parent is not a good person. They don't want to believe it. So
Right.
if it took us a long time to finally break through and see reality, it's going to be even harder for a child to do it. So be there for them, communicate with them, try to build that bond to where they feel comfortable and safe to be able to talk to you about what's going on, but don't go down the road as soon as you see an opening to say, "Well, little Johnny, I'll tell you why your mom is this way, because she's an undiagnosed borderline,
Yeah.
personality disorder, blah, blah, blah." Because unfortunately, our credibility with our kids is skewed because they think that we're bitter. They think that we're looking at everything under this hateful mode, which in some ways could be true, towards the ex. So our credibility is diminished.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a pattern of behavior that follows with the ex, and let's say your child comes up with something and they talk about the parent, don't take that as a bait. And then if they later talk about something else with a friend or something that has similar traits, focus on that. Like, "Hey, that's not, your friend did this. Did you think that's a good thing for your friend to do?" I mean, in your mind, you could be thinking, "Yeah, because that's exactly what your mom does every freaking day." Don't say that. Don't equate it to the parent. Help them string along the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, to where they can formulate it. And I mean, and honestly, if you can, and I know a lot of men don't like therapy, but if you can get your kids with a good therapist who understands it to help them break the bond on this, because even if they're with the other person, let's say you're one of the people who had, the ex has 80-20, you're every other weekend dad.
Mm-hmm.
Just because your kids are with the other person, they're still being emotionally neglected if you're dealing with a toxic narcissistic person. So they're being conditioned with those abandonment issues and "Why doesn't Mommy love me?" And then if you're being manipulated, they're thinking, "Well, Daddy doesn't love me." So there's all these underlying issues that they're going to follow them into adulthood. And if you can help them to undo that, and typically an unbiased person that they can talk, and the kids can bitch about you and they can bitch about mom, will help them to really be able to have to process everything that's happened and not carry this into life. Because as everyone, I think, hopefully knows, those unresolved issues, if they're not dealt with, we find the next person to solve those lessons. And I know, but I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way I do. I don't want my children to have to go through this. I want to break this cycle now and let them have a better life and have those good, emotional, healthy boundaries at an early age, so that they don't accept toxic behavior into their lives.
Absolutely. And with the actions, when I get those questions, I feel like it's appropriate to just point out, well, are the actions representative of what's being said? And that for me has been a great lesson for my daughters is that, hey, because then they apply the same principle to me, and they will and they have called me on, hey, Daddy, your actions aren't really supporting what you're saying. And so I think that's a really good lesson for kids to have, and it's an appropriate conversation to be having with kids if they do bring it up to you about that. You don't have to badmouth. You can just have a conversation, because that in turn is going to help them, like you talked about, not carry these behaviors, because they can very easily learn some of these behaviors from your ex, not carry this into their relationship. So understanding that their actions need to be consistent with what they're saying.
And I think the key point that you made on that, and this is critical. I mean, you're modeling appropriate behavior. So if your child is able to say, hey, Daddy, you did that, and a narcissistic person is going to typically rage on that.
Yeah.
The kid's going to learn early on, oh, you don't question, don't question the authority figure, because you're going to pay for it. And if you can sit down, and it's really tough, right? I mean, if you've had your buttons pushed and your finances are ruined and your credit's ruined and you're barely getting to see your kids and you're getting, you're not getting the information you're supposed to get, and your kids say something, I mean, you're already super tense. So it's imperative that you're able to catch yourself. I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and you can you can recover potentially, but it just makes it harder. But if you can turn around and say, okay, you know what, honey, let's talk about that a minute. Wow, you know what, you're right. That's not what I meant. And we can have a conversation. Then you're demonstrating to your kid way appropriate behavior is, to where if there was somebody, instead of the next person they get with, and they're playing emotional games and they're being manipulated, in the back of their subconscious mind, they're thinking, oh, well, that's the way Mommy and Daddy were, so this is normal. Even though they know they don't like it, they feel like, oh, okay, this is comfortable, this is the way people are, so they accept it. That's what we don't want. You want them to say, wait a minute, Bill, since you have girls, if that's who their, boyfriend or whatever is, to say, we need to be able to talk about this and have a reasonable conversation, not just rage on it or go down the more abusive, emotionally abusive traits.
Yep, absolutely. So we talked about actions being inconsistent with what they're speaking. What's another sign?
And this one, I'm going to say this, and what I will say is just be careful how you say this to people, because it could be construed the wrong way, is if you feel like you're dealing with a 30-year-old in like a 7-year-old body, that's
like temper tantrums and wanting to get their own way and just demanding
unreasonable. I mean, it's kind of like what you mentioned earlier about, well, if I reason with this person and I have a conversation with them, they'll stop and think about it.
Yeah.
Think about anybody who has kids that are at that age group, they don't do that, right? I mean, or maybe you could even say it's even younger. The difference is whenever your 6-year-old is throwing a temper tantrum, it's easy to throw them over your shoulder, walk them to their room, or put them in a timeout, or, do an appropriate cause and effect type of thing to show them that it's not right. The problem is when you're dealing with a 30-year-old, you throw them over your shoulder and you do something, you're probably going to go to jail.
Yeah, right.
So, it's recognizing that the patterns of behavior aren't consistent with a mature, emotionally mature individual. And when it's irrational, you can't reason with the person. It's just degraded into the I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to win. You're going to lose. And, be damned whoever else is in the way. You'll probably also feel like, oh my God, my ex or my soon to be ex is willing to cut her nose off to spite her face. And I mean, a lot of times I'm looking at it, I'm like, these decisions make no sense. It's like you are destroying everything for what? Yeah. And that's what but it's an irrational decision. A mature person will look at it and go, okay, all right, how do we make the best out of this? Not how do we, burn the whole place to the ground.
Right. So we stated the way to deal with the inconsistent actions to words was to model consistent actions to words, and if it comes up with kids, to have the conversation with them about that, but not to badmouth your ex. What's the way? And I'm going to share how I deal with this now post divorce. Is that Sometimes with the next sign that you just stated, which is being irrational and having tantrums, is sometimes the best thing for me to do is to ignore the tantrum, ignore the demands, ignore what they are. No words sometimes are better than any words. At least that is my experience.
No, you're spot on. I have a technique I call hybrid no contact, because when you have kids, you can't just erase the person out of your life.
Right.
But the premise behind it is look at every bit of communication, and personally stay away from the person. Don't do it face to face. Do it via email. I wouldn't even recommend text, because you want to have time to think about how you're going to respond to where you're not just reacting. And text and verbal is too easy just to have it devolve into badness. And the thing is like, if you get this whole diatribe of how you're a horrible person, you're a horrible father, you're bad, whatever, you're scum, you're scum, you're scum, you're scum, you're scum. And in there, it's the information of, or let's say it's a question, you're a piece of crap, but where's X?
Right.
You look through that, you ignore all the crap, and you just talk about, or you answer whatever is the question.
Right.
And don't respond. I mean, it's so easy for people to say, they come back and they say you're horrible. And then you come back and say, no, I'm not horrible because I've done this, this, and this. You're horrible because you do this, this, and this, and your behavior is this. And I mean, it's counterproductive. One, you're feeding them. You're effectively giving them attention/supply, which is a victory for them. And it's not going to accomplish anything. You're better off focusing on, like if it's an appointment, if it's like, you're a scumbag, whatever. And if you have to reply, and you want to say, hi, Susie, for you, let's say your ex's name, Susie.
Yeah.
And you say, hi, Susie, could you please tell me when the next doctor's appointment is, Bill? Right.
Exactly.
And that's it. I mean, not go through there and write this 9-page rebuttal on it. It doesn't help you. It isn't going to accomplish anything. And I would also say, for the most part, don't immediately respond.
Yeah.
If they say you something and they're calling you a scumbag, read it, set it down, wait a few hours, maybe write something, and then send it the next day or a couple days later. Give yourself time to really think about it before you respond to their provocations and their weird communications.
So I'll add to that is I carve out time for my responses, so that I have already taken the time to get myself into a space that is appropriate to do that, because you're exactly right. If you do it, something else could be going on. You could be having a rough day or whatever, and then that is just a trigger that is something that you don't need to then add fuel to whatever challenges you might already be having on that day or with your ex. I carve out specific time, unless it's an emergency, unless it's something that's pressing, to respond to and talk about these things. And another point that you brought up about they're needing a response, or by making that stuff, the ignoring of them just actually diminishes that. It just takes that away from them. You're not giving them what they're looking for. So by not responding, then you're essentially cutting off, cutting it down right there, taking it out at the root, and then there's nothing else they can do, and then to keep doing it. And I found that they exhaust their efforts after a certain period of time, because they're not getting what they're looking for. They're probably going to go look at it somewhere else look for it somewhere else in their life, and hopefully that's not with your children, but at least that's not you for the time being. It doesn't mean that they're not going to come back, because they are going to come back to you, and they are going to do it again. And then the last point I also wanted to make on that is, I look at it and I describe this to other men that I work with as, everybody's had the experience of walking down the street, maybe, running into somebody that is having has some mental emotional issues, and you're having a conversation with them and they're just totally off kilter. Just approach it like you would that. I mean, it's somebody that is off kilter, mentally, emotionally unstable, all that crap that somebody you met on the street is babbling about whatever's going on. And you're just like, okay, well, have a great day. And that same way, use the same logic around that.
One thing I just want to throw out there, and you kind of mentioned it, but typically these people adapt. So what'll happen is they'll use their tactics that you typically used to respond to. When you stop, they try other things. They typically don't just go away. And unfortunately for folks with kids, a lot of times it's then it's doing something with the kids. They'll either, instead of writing you saying you're a scumbag and whatever, they'll start having issues with the kids, or they won't tell you stuff about the kids, or they'll try to use that to try to get you to come back to the table to give them attention. I just want to throw that out there because I know for me, when I first stopped responding to her, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting some peace back in my life. And then after a month or so, it was like she finally realized, hey, wait a minute, he's not chasing me anymore. So she started lobbing hand grenades over the fence, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then when I finally stopped, with the more bad emails and stuff, when I stopped responding to that, the next thing was started messing with the kids. And then once I figured that out, and then later when I started dating, then it started trying to triangulate my girlfriend with the kids. I mean, it's like they adapt. So be prepared for it, because if you're not, it's really demoralizing whenever you feel like, oh, thank God, I finally found a peaceful state. It's okay. Maybe it's like North and South Korea where we're just at a stalemate, but we can equally coexist and it's okay. Oftentimes that's not really the case. They're going to try other things. Ultimately, you're right. They will run out of things to do that don't get to you anymore. And then ultimately they'll try to find different ways to do it. But you need to be prepared for it, because I've coached a lot of people who didn't expect that, and it emotionally crushed them whenever the next phase of it started. And I think if you're aware of it and you know it's coming, then you can be like, okay, you can almost look at it as a positive and go, hey, I'm at like phase 2 or I'm at phase 3 of this. So it's making progress. Right?
Or you can gamify it, right? Just make it a game and figure it out. But that's a great point, because if you're paying attention, and again, this is so hard because there's so many other challenges, and you're thinking, wow, I've got the kids and we got to figure out how to go to school today. And then we have dinner, and then I've got to get to work, and then we've got to pay the bills and all this. And then you're thinking, why would we have to throw all this ridiculous stuff in there? But just if you're paying attention to it, eventually you're going to figure out the patterns of what's going on. And then it's kind of like just knowing what the other player in a chess game or a board game is already going to do, because they've done it so many times. So you know what it's going to be. You're going to set yourself up for it. If you're taking care of yourself, putting yourself in a good space, controlling your environment, that's another thing that's critically important. Control your environment so that whatever happens, whatever hand grenade, nuclear missile, whatever they're going to throw at you, you are prepared, and your environment is stable to where you can deal with anything.
Yeah, let me dovetail on that for a moment. And in my mind, and I think what you're saying is that make sure your environment's peaceful.
Yes.
Make sure there's not chaos in your house. Make sure your foundation is as stable as it can be.
Yeah.
Get the chaos out of your life. If you're in the early parts of this, be very cautious what you allow into your life. Don't watch movies that make you angry or are triggering, for lack of a better word, to you. Don't listen to music that just gets you angry and frustrated. Take the opportunity, whenever you're finally in your own space you can't necessarily control everything, but to basically put everything to give you the best possible foundation to deal with this, because it will really help.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I just want to add a little on that. You're spot on with that. And
thanks. No, that's important. It's absolutely huge. All right, let's talk about one final sign and tip to deal with
it. The other sign on this is they will often commence a smear campaign and try to recruit people. Oftentimes they're called like flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz, but
that's a good one.
However you want to talk about it, to assist them in their campaign of destruction against you.
Yeah.
If you start noticing that, realize if somebody is swayed by what the ex is saying, they're not really in camp, like in camp, Jude or Camp Duane in the beginning, right? I mean, so just understand you're not going to be able to convince everybody that your ex is lying or telling a fairy tale to people. Yeah. So, and they will try to recruit your friends. They could be your lifelong friends that they've only known for a few years, your family, your coworkers, your church, if you're I don't know how many times I've heard where somebody who's in a church and the next thing their relationship falls apart and they're basically being kicked out because they've been painted as the bad guy. And now, their family is gone, their finances are gone, their support group, maybe their family is questioning them.
Yeah.
And you also now have these other support groups who are basically turning their back on you. That's another huge indicator. Well, one, a normal person wouldn't do that, right? So if that's happening, that is a huge indicator that you're dealing with somebody that's pretty damn toxic.
Yeah. Well, I think that the theme that I keep hearing here is trust your instincts, because if you think that it's something that doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't. It's not right. It's toxic. And just trust in yourself. And that's something that I didn't do. Didn't trust in myself. Keep going, what? There's got to be something else. And it's not. And it's not. And you're not going to change it, like we said. And you're not going to be able to utilize this for court. You're not going to be able to utilize it for anything other than finding a way to mitigate it, to make your life better, and to help your children to live. And so how do you deal with this? Because I know that this was something, the Facebook stuff on my business pages, with my family, all of what you just described. And it's, it's exhausting and it's demoralizing and demeaning and difficult. That's a lot of D's. To hear this from so many different people and go, really,
right.
Do you defend yourself with everybody? Do you have these conversations? I know what I tell men. I'm curious to hear what your remedy to that is.
For the most part, I would say don't waste your time with it.
Yeah.
But I know that's hard for most people. So what I would say is this: give it one try. Sit down and try to have a rational conversation with the person to say your side of the case. Don't do it in an emotional way.
Sure.
If it doesn't work, walk away from them.
Yeah.
Even if it's your family, even if it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your cousins, whatever. Because at this time, if somebody is in your environment and they're not helping you, and I'm not saying it's like, you're being narcissistic that you want everyone to just agree with you, but this is incredibly difficult. And you want to make sure that you have people surrounding you that are helping build you up, not tear you down.
Yeah.
So I know that most people just have a hard time with doing that. So just, again, recognize, even with flying monkeys or people who are surrogates for your ex, if their actions and words don't match, and if you try to communicate with them and you try to say, hey, look, this is what's really going on, and they don't go, oh, and some people will, right? Some people, if you're able to throw something out there and say, hey, you know what, I don't know what they're saying, but this is, like, let's say a typical one is, oh, they've abandoned me and whatever. It's like, hey, I didn't, I moved out, but I paid for the house. I didn't disconnect any of the services. I was giving them money, all these different things. So I hear what you're saying, but that doesn't relate to it. It just don't necessarily waste your time, because trying to recruit people who are already decided, are already geared against thinking that you're, thinking or believing the narrative that's being said, right, you're going to drive yourself insane. Yeah. And trying to, then if you get in the mindset to where you're like, oh, okay, well, these 5 people, I'm going to, if I can get them on my team, you're going to go nuts trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's so difficult, and it's so frustrating. And what I advise the men I work with is number one, look at how important that relationship is with you, and then determine how much effort you want to put into it. But really, it comes down to what you said. If that individual cares about you and loves you, they're going to spend the time to say, okay, well, I'm just curious. Let's talk about it. And they're going to take the time to talk about it and listen to what you've got to say, and not pass judgments right on you. And then it should be okay then if you're doing the right thing and you're a good person and you're doing it, so you won't have to worry. And and exactly what you just said, if they don't or they won't do that, walk away, because there's going to be absolutely zero benefit to trying to fight for that relationship, because it's only going to be a detriment to you. It's only going to be a detriment to your children. It'll just be an ongoing source of difficulty and frustration for you.
One thing I want to add on that, and this is very typical, whenever you're with somebody who's like this, more than likely, not always, if you've been with them for a long time, more than likely you grew up in a dysfunctional, potentially toxic household.
Yeah.
What that tends to mean is that you've inadvertently surrounded yourself with the same type of people.
Great point.
So what is going to happen is you're going to go through this phase where it's like your entire, what you feel like is your support group is going to dissipate and go away and evaporate, and you're going to feel very much alone.
Yeah.
You're basically going through a process of detoxifying yourself from the toxic people. So I've talked to so many people who are just like, oh my God, I've lost everything. I've lost my spouse. I've lost my family. I've lost my friends. I've lost, maybe your job. And in a lot of ways, you're purging all those toxic people out of your life. And then at the other side of this, you basically get to rebuild yourself and decide who you're going to allow into your life.
That's a fantastic point. And so let's end on that, because and that's potentially another episode that we just talk about how to do that, how to detoxify and start over with your life, because I like that description of it. And it's something at that time of divorce and right after where it dovetails into that self-care and rebuilding and figuring out a bigger and better life for yourself after the divorce.
Yeah.
Duane, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. Let us all know how we can connect with you. And I'm just going to say, anybody that's dealing with this stuff, connect with Duane. He has the expertise on this, and we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. Duane, would you not agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And if you're struggling with this, or you think that you're dealing with somebody like this, connect with Duane. And how can people reach you?
The best way is on my YouTube channel, which is DSD, Dad Surviving Divorce. I also do a daily morning show from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Pacific with Dial-In, where we can have a conversation about this type of stuff. Plus, there's a ton of videos. I have a website, dadsurvivingdivorce.com, where you can even find out more information, and that's where the podcasts are hosted. I also have a podcast version of the morning show that's on iTunes, Stitcher, all the main players as Break the Cycle with DSD. So just a final thought, you're not alone on this. This may seem like the darkest days of your life, but realistically, you're going to go through a transformation through this, and your life is going to get better. It may not feel like it at the beginning. Just take a deep breath, hold out the possibility for the potential of hope to things to get better, and you're going to get there.
Amen, brother. Duane Robert, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much, and appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Take care.